So you've been working out hard in the gym and you've been doing a little bit of this and you've got maybe even have a trainer or a professional working with you, but you still keep on getting regressions in terms of back pain or shoulder pain or knee pain or something like that. Or maybe you actually get to the point where you're really seeing progress, but then you revert right back to this. So today we're going to help you solve this problem by answering the three major questions no one, including your trainer, is asking that are imperative for lifelong health and strength. We're going to show you how to appropriately answer three questions for yourself, and these answers may surprise you. Three questions are: where am I at right now? What is my goal? And what are my resources to accomplish said goal? Well, that sounds pretty simple, right? Well, then why aren't most people getting to sustainable states of health and vigor, even when they have a trainer or a therapist? Why the yo-yo effect? So the first question that we're going to have you ask yourself is, where am I at right now? So think of this as like you're going on a trip. In order to get to where you want to go, you have to know where you are first. So most people, when starting to address their health and fitness and performance, really don't do a whole lot of planning or assessment at all past maybe just stepping on the scale. And so this is a lot like, planning to go on that trip and they're not even looking at the map. Most trainers are going to do a little bit more in terms of they're going to, maybe measure their body composition, maybe measure their BMI, their body weight, something of that nature. And then they're also going to make sure that that person can, is safe to undergo basic activity by looking at maybe some blood pressure or something like that. But they're not really going to measure this as they're going along through that person's journey, nor are they going to look at deeper functionality in order to really ascertain what that person should do safely along that journey or what they should build up as underlying components of their strategy. Then most physical therapists are going to do assessments that are only looking at where their client is in association with their injury, not really according to long-term balance. Because that's just what physical therapy has the time and ability to do for the most part. And so we want to ask, what shift do we need to make with our strategy? And that means that our assessment needs to be comprehensive and holistic. Well, your assessment is going to refine the specific changes that you need to make. That means that these are specific goals and specific mile markers you need to have in your journey. And so your goals are going to dictate what kind of strategy that you may be best to implement in order to follow, and or what kind of professional guidance you may need if you need to get a professional at all. So at first you may have a whole bunch of general goals. You're going to be like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to get in shape. And these are things usually that you think you need, that you're told that you need to do. And you're probably right. But you need to narrow that down with the examination to understand really what underlies those goals in terms of the way your body functions. Now, most people have an idea of what they want to accomplish going into the project of you, but it needs to be refined depending on that assessment. You want to look at three different categories. You want to look at pain and what underlying factors may be causing the pain, health and what underlying factors may be causing, negative health conditions. And you want to look at performance and where your body can perform the specific physical tasks that are going to get you to your goal. So, for instance, I was in high school. I was training for football. We measured performance in the weight room, but not in health or pain. And subsequently, I ended up with 20 years of back pain that took me 20 years to get over. I got better throughout that 20 years, but it's still, I still had those lingering imbalances that were leading to back spasms and stuff like that were hard to get over and are really hijacking my my ability to perform the tasks that I needed to in order to get to my own goals. And so you need to go in and ask from a health standpoint, you need to go, you need to fill out some questionnaires and get an in-depth sort of checklist going on about what your health history is and what your experience has been in relationship to health. And then you need to look at your diagnostics. You need to have a detailed view of the underlying factors that may affect the outcomes of your program. And that might be on an inflammation, that might be, how your metabolic system's working, how your heart health is, all that kind of stuff. You're going to want to look at your mechanics. How does your body move, and how it performs movement is paramount to whether the appropriate movements can be carried out without giving you setbacks related to pain and stiffness. And then, of course, you want to find those performance parameters. How good do you perform cardiovascularly? How well do you perform core strength? How well do you perform gross strength movements like your squat and your press and all that kind of stuff? How well do you perform? Because that is going to be a large part of what parameters are set in place for you to be able to get to your goal with reference to that strategy that you're performing. You want to make sure that these assessments themselves are individual specific, meaning that they need to be dependent on your description of what your current goal is and what else you see in your current condition. If you have pain, for instance, you're not going to want to go and do a squat, a back squat, a max back squat. That probably wouldn't be the best assessment for you. And so the second question that we want to ask is, where do I want to go? Or why do I want to go there? Why do I want these goals? Well, this is called a value statement. And the definition of a value statement is it's the goal behind the goal. It's the long-term value of the goal that you want to achieve. It is the question of how will accomplishing the goal that you want to achieve change some other aspect of your life? So pretend that you're traveling from LA to Chicago. And at first, it's really neat just to travel and see the sights and all these things that you're passing from Los Angeles to Chicago. But you start thinking, well, why did I want to go to Chicago in the first place? Was it for a job? Was it for a boyfriend or girlfriend? Was it, in order to go to an event like a wedding or something like that? Why did I want to get to Chicago? Because this will dictate what avenues you take in order to get to Chicago. Are you going to go there by plane? Are you going to go by train? Are you going to drive? How are you going to get there? And how you're getting there affect, what your value is for going there? And so, you're going to want to ask yourself, with relationship to your physical journey, do I want to look good for the next door neighbor? Is that is that my main impetus for embarking on this journey? Do I want to make my coworkers jealous? Do I want to live a long, healthy life free of sickness? Do I want to be useful to friends, loved ones, and neighbors? Are these what I want to do? All of these will dictate how you maintain your goal over time. The true reason for you to ask these questions is to keep you working towards what truly matters for the long term. Short-term goals like just losing weight don't keep an individual engaged for realizing and sustaining their goal over a lifetime. The other reason is that this simplifies your strategy so that you can avoid what we call shiny object syndrome. Shiny object syndrome is like, oh, today I want to lose weight, but tomorrow I want to do a marathon. Today I want to, get bigger muscles, and tomorrow I want to enter a pie eating contest. These are all things that might conflict with each other depending on, what your path is. Each path is slightly different in terms of getting you to where you want to be and staying there for a lifetime. So for instance, when I was 14 years old, I wanted to get bigger, faster, stronger. The value of that is that I wanted to perform better on the field in terms of football. I wanted to socially be better with the fair sex by, looking a little bit better. And I wanted not to be bullied. So, all those things went together. And then my goal in my 40s are I want to be pain free. I want to be strong and energetic. And the value of those things are that, I want to be happy and calm in my relationships, so pain, hard to do that when you're in pain all the time. I want to be physically useful to my friends, family, neighbors, my community. And then I also want to be productive, focused, and centered for myself and for my business and all that kind of stuff. And so all of that goes into my physical approach. So one of the overall goals of the value statement is to come up with a strategy that maximizes your return on investment. You want the best physical outcome with respect to the value statement and the least amount of invested time, money, equipment, or what I call PETA, which is a pain in the ass. Now, pain in the ass could be the parking lot at the gym. It could be a snarky front desk girl. It could be the fact that all the treadmills are taken at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. All of those are PETA problems. And so that brings us into what are my resources? That's the third question that we have to answer. And most people don't take adequate accounting of their resources. This is like taking a trip, going on your trip from LA to Chicago with a broken gas gauge. Most people look mostly at money. And the biggest problem is not money. The biggest problem is time. For instance, for trainers and other professionals, what will happen is we'll get somebody into a program and they'll really dedicate themselves for the first month or two. And then all of a sudden they have cancellations. And these cancellations, they, are in the form, they create this lack of continuity and consistency, and lack of continuity and consistency doesn't get them to where they need to go in their journey. And so this is a big problem. And it's indicative that the professional and or the client didn't adequately address the area of resources so that we made sure that our strategy matched with the resources in terms of time, in terms of dedication, or whatever that may be. And so other resources we might have that we want to analyze, we want to analyze these as assets or liabilities. So your social and your family. Is your wife or husband coming home with Cocoa Puffs, or are they coming home with fruits and vegetables? That's a good example of your social and family resource being an asset or liability. Your job. Is it an active job or is it a sedentary job? Do they have a gym there? Do they not have a gym there? Do they encourage activity, if you do have a sedentary job, or do they, encourage sitting at your cubicle and just getting what you need to get done for the company done? Your environment. If I step outside of my house, do I have parks and trails? Do I have a sidewalk? Those sorts of things. Or do I live in a city with no sidewalks and only cars right outside my car or right outside my house? That's environment. Do I have discipline and focus? What is my discipline and focus? If I'm spending time at my job and at the end of the day, I've been in meetings for 10 hours straight and I've been thinking and I've been dedicating all that discipline and focus to my job, maybe I don't have a whole lot left to dedicate to my project of me physically, and so that needs to be ascertained before I embark on a journey and before I implement a strategy that utilizes a lot of discipline and focus, because they're not going to be connected with each other. And those two things are going to conflict. My goals and my strategy are going to conflict because my strategy is going to take more resources than I have left. Time frame. Do I say that I need to lose 30 pounds in a month? Well, that might not be appropriate with respect to all the rest of the resources that I have. Do I have a facility that works for me? My facility might be my front yard. It might be the park. It might be a facility at at my job, or it might be the gym. How does that facility affect me as an asset or as a liability? Again, there's that PETA factor. Do I have to park? Do I have to spend 15 minutes parking in order to get into the facility? Do I have to spend 15 minutes looking for a locker? Do I have to interact with the snarky front desk person? Do I have to wait 20 minutes to get on a treadmill? All those things are related to facility. Of course, I'm using examples of the gym, but this could be examples of almost anything. And so, of course, you can't actually put a program into effect without knowing what assessments to get and how to work them into your strategy. So go ahead and click on this next video I have for you, and we'll get you going on that. Thank you very much.